4 carriers. 6 minutes. One impossible challenge. The odds were impossible, with a 4-to-1 advantage for Japan. The Japanese held a perfect 180-day winning streak. Military analysts said a surprise attack couldn't be done. The WWII combat air patrol was an impenetrable wall. Every expert predicted a total American collapse. But on June 4th, 1942, the world changed forever. Midway was the key to the entire Pacific theater. Losing it would have put Hawaii in direct bomb range. The Americans were down to their last 3 carriers. The Yorktown was literally held together by patches and prayers. What happened next would rewrite naval doctrine. A masterclass in calculated risk was about to begin. Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance didn't just survive the day. He executed the most devastating ambush in maritime history. He defied every standard naval manual ever written. 3 Japanese flagships were burning by the end. The tactic is still taught at the Naval War College today. Our story begins 48 hours before the first shot. U.S. codebreakers at Station HYPO had achieved the impossible. Take neo, te where, and the when, but not the how. Enter Raymond Spruance, a man of quiet, lethal logic. He'd never commanded a carrier task force in his life. The Japanese plan was a complex trap to lure out the U.S. fleet. Admiral Yamamoto believed his superior numbers would crush them. But the hunters were about to become the prey. Spruance took a massive gamble on his own intelligence. He moved his ships to Point Luck, a spot in the empty ocean. He was waiting in the dark for a giant to emerge. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. Main body sighted at 5:30 a.m. The sleeping giant was unmasked. The Japanese were launching their first strike against Midway. They were confident, unaware of the American presence nearby. Nagumo's scouts had failed to find the U.S. carriers. Spruance faced a grueling decision on the Enterprise. He chose to launch early, a decision of pure steel. The American pilots knew the fuel math was against them. Many would not have enough gas to make the return trip. It was a one-way mission for the sake of surprise. The low-level TBD Devastator bombers arrived first. They were slow and vulnerable to the deadly Zero fighters. The Japanese Zeros swarmed down to sea level. The American torpedo squadrons were systematically decimated. Out of 15 planes in Torpedo 8, only 1 man survived. Their sacrifice felt like a total failure in the moment, but the sacrifice served a hidden, secondary purpose. It drew the Japanese air defense down to the water's surface. The sky above the IJN fleet was suddenly empty. At 10:22 a.m., the high-altitude dive bombers arrived. Wade McCluskey spotted the Japanese wake through the clouds. They arrived at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability. The Japanese decks were covered in fuel lines and bombs. They were in the middle of rearming their second wave. The carriers were floating powder kegs waiting for a spark. Diving now. The radio screamed as the SBDs tipped over. They fell from 14,000 feet in a near-vertical scream. Gravity was now the Americans' greatest weapon. The first bomb missed, but the second struck the Akagi. It penetrated the flight deck and exploded in the hangar. The flagship of the Imperial Navy was doomed. Simultaneously, the carrier Kaga was hit by 4 bombs. The bridge was vaporized, and the fuel lines ignited. In seconds, 2 prideful giants were turned to scrap. The Soryu was the third to feel the Americans' wrath. 3 direct hits turned the carrier into a funeral pyre. 3 carriers were burning in less than 6 minutes. Admiral Nagama was forced to abandon his burning flagship. The invincible Kido Butai was shattered and paralyzed. The tide of the Pacific War had shifted in a heartbeat. Only the carrier Hiryu remained operational and ready. Admiral Yamaguchi launched a desperate, vengeful counterstrike. The Japanese were down, but they weren't out yet. They found the USS Yorktown, the ship they thought was dead. Japanese dive bombers scored 3 devastating hits. The old lady of the fleet was taking a beating. Despite the damage, the Yorktown's crew refused to quit. They repaired the deck and got the boilers running again. In an hour, she was back to making 20 knots. A second Japanese wave arrived and saw a carrier. They thought it was a different, fresh American ship. The Yorktown's resilience confused the Japanese pilots. 2 torpedoes finally slammed into the Yorktown's side. The ship began to list heavily to the port side. Abandoned ship was finally ordered for the Yorktown. But the sacrifice of the Yorktown had bought Spruance time. He knew where the Hiryu was hiding in the distance. The final predator was about to be hunted down. The Enterprise launched a second strike of dive bombers. The pilots were exhausted, but their resolve was absolute. They were flying to finish what they started. The Hiryu put up a fierce defense with its remaining Zeros. 4 bombs struck the Hiryu, ending the threat. By nightfall, the once mighty Kido Butai was gone. 4 fleet carriers, the backbone of Japan, were lost. The sun set on a new era of naval warfare. Yamamoto, aboard the Yamato, couldn't believe the reports. His plan to destroy the American fleet had backfired. He ordered a general retreat into the darkness. The battle wasn't just a tactical win. It was psychological. The myth of Japanese invincibility was shattered forever. The Pacific was no longer a Japanese lake. Spruance remained calm, even in the face of total victory. He refused to chase the remaining fleet into a night trap. He knew when to gamble and when to hold. The surviving American pilots landed on darkened decks. Many had only drops of fuel remaining in their tanks. They were heroes returning to a changed world. Why did the Americans win against such heavy odds? It was a combination of code-breaking, luck, and timing. But primarily, it was the courage to take the risk. The U.S. Navy learned that the carrier was the new king. The era of the battleship was officially over. Midway proved air power was the ultimate decider. Japan could not replace their lost carriers or pilots. Their elite air crews were gone in a single afternoon. The loss of experience was a wound that never healed. Calculated risk means knowing the probability of success. Spruance didn't gamble blindly. He used every scrap of info. It is the difference between a fool and a genius. The Battle of Midway lasted only 4 days in total, but the impact would be felt for the next 3 years. It was the turning point of the entire war. We remember the pilots of Torpedo 8 who led the way. They knew their planes were obsolete, but flew anyway. Valor is doing the job despite the cost. The USS Yorktown finally sank on June 7th. She had survived the Coral Sea and most of Midway. She gave everything she had to the cause. If Midway had been lost, the U.S. West Coast would be next. History hangs on the thinnest of threads and moments. 6 minutes changed the fate of millions. The Japanese Navy went on the defensive for the first time. The initiative had passed to the United States. The road to Tokyo began at Midway. Station HYPO's Joe Rochefort is a hero often forgotten. He worked in a basement in Hawaii to find the truth. The war was won in the mind before the sea. The thatch weave was a new tactic used to fight Zeros. Innovation under pressure is the American hallmark. They adapted in the middle of the fire. Admiral Nimitz trusted his commanders on the scene. He gave Spruance the autonomy to make the big call. Leadership is knowing who to put in the fight. The Japanese carriers were built for speed, not armor. This design choice proved fatal when the bombs fell. Technical flaws can stay hidden until the crisis. The dive bombers were the silver bullets of the U.S. Navy. The SBD Dauntless was slow, but incredibly accurate. The right tool, at the right time, changes everything. Midway remains a case study in military intelligence. Knowing what the enemy will do is the ultimate power. Information is the most valuable commodity. The battle showed that no empire is truly invincible. Arrogance is often the precursor to a great fall. The Japanese suffered from victory disease. Ensign George Gay was the sole survivor of Torpedo 8. He watched the destruction of the IJN from the water. He had the best and worst seat in the house. The courage of the mechanics on the Yorktown was legendary. They worked 72 hours straight to get her back in the fight. Victory is built by those behind the scenes. The victory allowed the U.S. to focus on the Europe first goal. Midway secured the Pacific so Hitler could be defeated. One battle saved 2 different theaters of war. The Japanese public wasn't told the truth about Midway. The loss was kept a state secret for years. The truth was buried beneath the waves. Carrier-based warfare became the standard for the U.S. The Navy began building the Essex-class carriers immediately. An industrial machine was waking up. The Battle of Midway is a story of human endurance. It reminds us that history is made by individuals. Ordinary men doing extraordinary things. Today, the U.S. Navy still honors the heroes of Midway. The names of the ships and the men live on. Tradition is the link between the past and future. The wreckage of the carriers was found in 2019. They lie 4 miles down in the deep, dark silence. The ghosts of Midway finally have a voice. The coral atoll of Midway is now a peaceful bird sanctuary. Nature has reclaimed the site of the great struggle. Where thunder once rolled, only birds sing. Never count out an opponent who has everything to lose. Desperate can lead to the most brilliant innovations. The underdog has a bite that history remembers. Rear Admiral Spruance retired as one of the greats. He never sought the spotlight, only the objective. True greatness doesn't need to shout. 10 minutes past 10 on June 4th, 1942. The moment the world's axis shifted toward liberty, a few brave pilots changed the century. We study Midway to understand the power of choice. One decision can ripple through time forever. Your choice today is your legacy tomorrow. 4 carriers. 6 minutes. A world saved. The Battle of Midway stands as a monument to grit. The most decisive naval battle in 3,000 years. Midway. The victory of calculated risk. The spirit of those 6 minutes lives on today, a testament to what can be achieved against all odds. It is exactly 7 o'clock hours. Admiral Spruance makes a choice. He decides to launch everything. The radical gamble begins now. The planes are at their limit. They're flying at extreme range. One wrong move means death. The pilots may run out of fuel. If the Japanese fleet moves, the American pilots will drown. The ocean is a vast graveyard. The stakes could not be higher. History hides a dark secret. Nobody knew it at the time. The first 3 waves failed. It was an absolute disaster. Torpedo Squadron 8 leads. They fly into a wall of fire. The AA guns are roaring loud. The sky turns black with smoke. 15 planes go into the fight. The formation is torn apart. Engines scream and metal twists. The squadron is being wiped out. Only one man survives the fire. Ensign George Gay is alone. He floats in the burning water. The tragedy is nearly complete. But notice what happens next. The Japanese Zeros are diving. They drop down to sea level. They are chasing the bombers. The Japanese focus on the deck. They want to kill every plane. They leave the high sky empty. The ceiling is now wide open. The defense is pulled down. The trap is unknowingly set. The sky above is silent and clear. The turning point is coming. The Zeros are out of position. They are too low to climb back. They have exhausted their ammo. The Japanese are now vulnerable. High above the rolling waves, the American dive bombers wait. They are hunting for a shadow. The ocean looks empty and blue. It is now 10:22 in the morning. The next minute changes history. The world is about to shift. 60 seconds of pure destiny. At 18,000 feet in the air, SPD Dauntlesses orbit the sun. They are looking for a ghost. The Japanese fleet is hidden. Commander McCloskey is low. His fuel gauges are hitting red. He is searching the empty sea. He refuses to turn back yet. Suddenly he spots a white wake. A lone destroyer streaks fast. It is a silver needle in the sea. McCloskey decides to follow it. He tracks the ship's white path. He bets his life on this lead. The engine coughs on thin fumes. The horizon finally opens up. Suddenly he looks straight down. The Akagi is right below him. The Kaga and Soriya are there. The strike force is exposed. The carrier decks are a mess. They are cluttered with planes. The fuel hoses are everywhere. The ships are ready to explode. Live bombs sit in the open air. The hangars are full of gas. They are eggshells with hammers. One spark will end it all. McCloskey pushes his stick. The nose drops into a dive. The wind screams on the glass. The target grows every second. The pilots plummet at 70 degrees. They're falling like stones. The G-force pulls at their skin. They focus only on the deck. This is one down for the Navy. A massive bomb leaves the rack. Gravity pulls the metal down. The first explosion rocks the sea. This is 2 down for the fleet. The Kaga is hit in the center. Fireballs rise into the clouds. The Japanese dream is dying. In only 6 short minutes, the heart of the Navy burns. The Imperial power is broken. The surprise is now complete. It was a fluke of pure timing. The Zeros were too low to help. The Dauntlesses had the sky. A miracle occurred in the blue. It was the sheer guts of pilots. Men who refused to turn back. They chose duty over survival. They found glory in the clouds. The carriers are now furnaces. The metal melts into the sea. The smoke can be seen for miles. The tide of the war has turned. Secondary blasts rock the ships. The aviation fuel is igniting. Chain reactions destroy the hull. The carriers are beyond saving. Admiral Nagumo watches in shock. His flagships are burning ruins. The invincibility is shattered. The rising sun begins to set. The immediate aftermath is grim. Japan has lost 4 carriers. The pride of their fleet is gone. The ocean floor claims them. 3,000 men are lost. The veteran pilots are gone. A generation of skill is erased. The cost of war is staggering. The United States lost 1. Yorktown is gone forever, but the victory is absolute. The strategic balance has shifted. The initiative is now American. The Pacific is no longer theirs. The advance has finally stopped. Midway is a name for the ages. Here's why this matters today. It wasn't just about the guns. It wasn't just about the planes. It was about the power of data. Codebreakers found the target. They knew the word for Midway. AF was the secret signal. The trap was set by the math. Signals intelligence won the day, knowing the enemy's mind first. Information is the greatest weapon, more powerful than raw fire. Spruance used a calculated risk. He measured the odds carefully. He did not act on blind fear. He acted on cold, hard truth. This is the gold standard now. Leaders study his every move. Pressure reveals a man's soul. Spruance did not break today. He did not wait for perfection. He created the moment himself. He seized the gap in time. He changed the world forever. The battle proved one thing. Luck favors the prepared mind. The Americans were ready. The Japanese were overconfident. The SPD Dauntless was the hero. A slow plane with a big heart. It delivered the killing blow. It was the hammer of the Navy. The crews on deck were brave. They worked through the fire. They tried to save the ships, but the damage was too great. Imagine the heat of the fire. Steel buckling under the flame. The sound of the ocean rushing in. A nightmare in the middle of nowhere. The victory was not celebrated yet. The war would last 3 more years. But the road to Tokyo started here. The momentum had finally shifted. History is written by the bold, by those who dive into the dark. Midway was a test of character, a test that the U.S. passed. We look back at these maps. We see the lines of the ships, but we must remember the men, the faces behind the machines. Tactical innovation is the key. Against all impossible odds, the ghost ships still speak. History is never truly dead. Modern warfare is different now. Satellites watch from the stars, but the human element remains. The commander's intent is king. Spruance taught us to be calm, to look at the facts of the case, to ignore the noise of the battle, to strike when the time is right. The Enterprise lived to fight on, the gray ghost of the Pacific. She carried the spirit of the crews, a legend forged in the fire. The ocean hides the wrecks, deep in the crushing dark. They sit as silent monuments to the violence of that June day. We must learn from the mistakes. The Japanese ignored the warnings. They believed they could not lose. Arrogance was their greatest foe. Flexibility is a weapon too. McCluskey changed the plan. He followed his gut instinct. Rigidity leads to total failure. Every pilot had a choice: to pull out or to push through. They chose to stay in the dive. They chose to finish the job. The Yorktown's loss was heavy. She had been repaired in days. She fought with a broken heart. She gave her life for the win. The world map was redrawn. The age of the carrier began. The battleship was now a relic. Air power ruled the open seas. Signals, scouts, and timing. These are the pillars of victory. Without one, the others fail. The Americans had all three. Think about the silence after. When the guns stopped firing, only the sound of the wind and the crackle of burning oil. It was a defining moment. For a nation and its people, the turning of the tide. The birth of a superpower. Spruance's legacy is clear. Be decisive when it counts. Trust your training and your team. Never let a moment go to waste. The ghost ships of the Atlantic. That is a story for next time. Another layer of the Great War. Another lesson in tactical grit. But today we honor Midway. The island that held the line. The pilots who flew the planes. The commanders who took the risk. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the tactics of the past, hit the subscribe button now. Join our community of historians. We explore the turning points. The minutes that changed the world. The stories you weren't told. The reality behind the myth. Thanks for watching the climax of the Pacific's greatest fight. The legacy of Midway lives on in every leader who takes a risk. Next week, we head to the cold, to the U-boats, and the convoys. See you in the next chapter. This is Tactical History, signing off.